I realized that this is fucking impossible. No one can look at this. We can't make sense of this. Like I can look at it and make sense of it. Obviously, it's not impossible at all to look at and make sense of, but it ain't no way to make a video. It ain't no way to communicate what's going on out here. And what we need is a calendar. We need a calendar of when were these various planes in the U.S. We also need a map showing the mapping of these flights, which your boy is working on here, mapping the flights. But to show the dates, it'll be really useful to have a freaking calendar. So I made one.
Conspiracy theories are entering a dangerous...
Information is the oxygen of the democracy.
There's so much evidence out there that even if less than 1% is true, that would be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet.
And it's pretty obvious. It's not hard to understand how they're marked here. SUBGM is the one that I noticed yesterday that it was in Provo all the way since July of 2024, just sitting here in Provo, apparently. BTU drops into, and they always, like in making this map, this chart, I realized that literally every single one starts its trip with Cairo to Paris. And then from Paris, they take different flights into the U.S. in various ways. But again, these planes, these Falcons, they only need one stop to refuel at the most. They don't need 2 fuel stops. It's all very strange. So like Cairo to Paris, and then on the 17th all at once, after doing an overnight in Paris, which they always overnight in Paris, and they always overnight in Wilmington before flying. They never just stop over. Then on the 17th, it goes Paris to Omaha to Lincoln. And Omaha and Lincoln are right next to each other. Omaha and Lincoln, and maybe there's a legitimate explanation, but Omaha, Nebraska and Lincoln, Nebraska are these 2 yellow dots right here, right next to each other. So like, why are you flying over to Omaha and then to Lincoln? If you're doing maintenance, that doesn't make any sense. Doesn't seem like a maintenance trip. Lots of other legitimate reasons to fly to the U.S. as an Egyptian military craft. Lots of reasons. But our U.S. government damn well better know what those reasons are. Right? February gets more exciting. SUBTV flies in Cairo to Paris first, always first, and then all in one day after overnighting in Paris, it goes Paris to Detroit to Lincoln. Stays for a while in Lincoln, Nebraska. And remember, Lincoln is where that Dassault repair facility is that would ostensibly be servicing these planes. But why are you flying Cairo to Paris to Detroit to Lincoln just to get to Lincoln when you could take out 2 of those stops if you're just going for maintenance? It's not like you're not picking up parts. You're not picking up personnel. That's not how a maintenance trip would work. So it doesn't really make sense. Exchanging pilots? Why would the Egyptian military be exchanging pilots? Right? Connecting with different 3-letter agencies? Now there's a possibility. Maybe they're doing, who knows? Maybe they're picking people up. Who knows who they would be picking up? SUBTU jumps in February, Cairo to Paris first, overnights in Paris, and then Paris to St. Louis. And then they do a 15-minute of St. Louis to St. Louis right there. And I put in a note that January 31st is when Candace starts airing the Becoming Brigitte Season 1, right here. Okay? Then, February 17th, Candace interviews Broussard, and they put that on air on the 17th. And right then, BTU is in America. Cairo to Paris, Paris to St. Louis. And remember, she suspects that they were surveilling Broussard's phone, and they knew in advance when this was going to be airing. Worth noting. They stay in St. Louis for a week, and then they go St. Louis to Wilmington, overnight in Wilmington, like always, and then Wilmington to Cairo. Very typical. Then on the 24th, immediately after this flight leaves, the very next day, Charlie Kirk texts Candace and says, "Hey, I have something to tell you from the White House." "Okay, I'm around. Call me." February 25th, Sergio Gore calls her and orders her to stop speaking about it. And then February 26th, Donald Trump himself calls her and asks her to stop speaking about Brigitte. Right after this green plane leaves. Kind of interesting. Much more obvious when you see it on the timeline like that. March, this BGM is still just chilling in Provo. And then BTV does 2 trips. Cairo to Paris, and then the next day, Paris, Omaha to Lincoln. And then at the end of its trip, it goes Lincoln to Wilmington and overnights, and then it goes Wilmington to Cairo. Comes right back later that week, Cairo to Paris the first day, and then Paris, Detroit to Wichita, Kansas. Stays in Wichita for a while, then it goes Wichita to Wilmington, and then leaves Wilmington to Cairo direct. Stays in Wilmington for quite some time right there, apparently. This is just based on the publicly available flight data. And then in April, BGM finally gets its shit together. And this is kind of weird. SU-BGM, the pink plane, has been sitting on the runway in Provo, ostensibly getting repairs done, I would assume, for like 8 months now. And then on 4/10, on April 10th right here, it does a Provo to Provo flight for 55 minutes. I don't know what this means yet. I would love for a flight expert to examine this and look at this and tell us what this might mean. Because on April 10th, BGM does a Provo to Provo flight that it says on the flight data it takes 55 minutes for that flight at 3:16 p.m. local time. But in the local time chart, it says that it lands before it takes off. But in the UTC time code chart, it doesn't do that. And it says that it makes sense and the numbers all add up. BGM. It's right here. Provo to Provo. Okay? This is in the local time chart where it doesn't make sense. It does a Provo to Provo flight on April 10th that takes 55 minutes long. This is the flight duration. And on the local time chart, this is the declared time of departure, and this is the transponder's actual time of departure, second column. And then this is the declared landing time and the actual transponder landing time. So in the local time chart, unless there's a data problem at Flight Radar 24, the transponder apparently says that it takes off at 3:16 p.m. and it lands 4 or 5 minutes before it even takes off, which is kind of weird, right? Test flight, right? Obviously, it's a test flight to make sure that the repairs that they did worked. Obviously, they didn't work if your fucking transponder is breaking like that, right? But it never does another test flight. That's the only Provo to Provo flight it does. And then 6 days later, it goes Provo to Goose Bay to Paris, and then it stays in Paris for 2 days, and then it flies Paris to Cairo. Again, with the Paris connection for some reason. So that's a little weird. But it's even a little weirder because when you click local times, local airport times, all the numbers on the chart change. All of them. Meaning, as far as I can tell, that every time on this chart right here is local time. So it's broken. Something's broken. It can't take off at 3:16 p.m. and land 5 minutes earlier. Especially if the flight takes 55 minutes to complete. Right? And even from the declared times, 4:11 p.m., they said they were going to land an hour before they departed. Or rather, an hour after. They declared that they were going to take off an hour after they said they were going to land. But you go over to the UTC time code charts, and again, Provo to Provo, April 10th, 55-minute flight. Transponder says they took off at 9:16 p.m. UTC and that they landed at 10:11 p.m. UTC. Which works. That's perfectly mathematical. That's exactly right. 9:16 p.m. plus 55 minutes equals 10:11 p.m. So the local time data doesn't match the UTC time data. Let's check it on the actual thing. I have a way that I think we can check it. So up here in this menu, in miscellaneous, this little checkbox is local airport time. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Provo to Provo flight, which is right here. Okay. So right now it's in local time. They say that it takes off at 3:16 p.m. local time and then it lands 5 minutes before it ever took off in local time. We'll click this and see, does 3:11 change? It does. All the times change. All the times are changing right here. I can only zoom in so much and still have access to my thingamajig. but it is this one right here. I'll highlight it. Changes 311 to 1011, changes 316 to 916. So, what's wrong with their fucking transponder? Maybe it's a problem with Flight Radar 24. Maybe it's nothing wrong with the transponder, but it's weird. Okay? So, you'd think that it's a mistake that they were doing repairs and the repairs didn't work and that they should do another test flight, but they don't do another test flight. And I'm obviously no aircraft fixer, so I would love for an expert to chime in and give us a legitimate, normal understanding of why that would happen. Because then it goes Provo to Goose Bay to Paris, stays in Paris for 2 days, and flies back to Cairo. Okay? These things keep happening. May, June. BND comes in May, and it stays for a long time. Cairo to Paris, and then it overnights in Paris for one night, and then Paris, Goose Bay, Minot, and then Provo, all in one day. So if this is a maintenance flight, a repairs flight, why the fuck are you doing 1, 2, 3, 4 legs to get to your maintenance stop? Right? Because if it's going to be maintenance, why do 4 legs? And then it stays in Provo maybe for maintenance, but I don't think so. For all of this time. It turns on for 1 minute on the 10th of June at 2:40 p.m. Utah time. Right there. Just on for 1 minute for some reason. And then on July 1st, Macron sends another legal threat. Okay. The TPUSA Florida event happens on, I believe, the 13th and the 14th. The Google Trend searches intensify strongly in Israel. Red plane still hanging out. Blue plane, SUBTT, goes Cairo to Paris. Paris to Omaha to Lincoln, all in the next day. Macron's lawsuit drops on the 23rd in Delaware for some reason. Don't know why. And then the blue plane flies Lincoln to Wilmington and then Wilmington to Cairo. Yellow plane comes back in beginning of August. The Hamptons meeting happens on the 4th while the yellow plane is in the U.S. And then blue plane drops in right before the UVU an event is announced. They do line up pretty well, right? It's like maybe we're seeing coincidences. Maybe we're seeing coincidences. But yeah, Cairo to Wilmington, it can totally fly Cairo to Wilmington distance. It dropped in Delaware because that's where her business is registered. I don't think that's true. I don't think that Candace's business is registered in Delaware. Is it because you're saying that's where Brigitte Macron's business is registered? Because yes, this is a coincidence theory. Thank you. I will have a great Thanksgiving. So the UVU event is announced on the 27th of August. And then Charlie texts the group chat somewhere at the beginning of September. I haven't pinned down the date yet. Chat, does anyone in the chat know the exact date of Charlie texting the group chat saying he's going to abandon the pro-Israel cause? Because right around that time, BTT flies Cairo to Paris and then Paris to Minot to Provo. And then it stays there through Charlie's murder on the 10th. And that day, Blue Plane flies out of Provo at 7:14 a.m. local time. They certainly don't look like maintenance trips to me, right? Purple and Pineberry? And then the next day it flies Wilmington to Cairo at 7:56 a.m. local time. Red Plane goes Provo to Goose Bay to Paris on the 13th, stays in Paris for 2 days, and then flies Paris to Cairo on the 15th. Okay? Then Yellow Plane comes back the day after Candace is reporting about the FBI cutting ties with the ADL. Shit's getting kind of spicy on her reporting. I don't know if that's relevant or not, but it goes Cairo to Paris and then Paris, Omaha, Lincoln. stays in Lincoln all throughout, apparently. And then this is where she drops Charlie Kirk's text messages on the 6th, Monday, the 6th of October. And then Yellow Plane leaves Lincoln to Wilmington. And then the next day, Wilmington, Delaware to Cairo. The Yellow Plane, BTV, just made another trip here last week. Cairo to Paris, and then Paris to Omaha to Lincoln. It stayed in Lincoln for a week. And then on the 18th of November, Lincoln to Wilmington. And then on the 19th, Wilmington to Cairo. And that's where we are today. Kind of interesting, if you ask me. So, you're going to see this reported on again in Free Speech Friday. You're just getting a sneak peek of it here. It's insane that they came back, but it's also very logical that they came back if you think about it. Are they still following Erica? Now, that is a good question. I don't know that yet. That'll take a long time for me to look into because I'm trying to do this without Candace's reporting. I'm trying to do this completely independently on my own from what I can see. September 8th is the date for the group chat. Mystic Maven, do you have a source on that? Can you direct me to a source where I can double check you? I believe you. I just want to also double check. Was it in one of the videos? Did Candace say that explicitly? Where's the reporting that we're talking about September 8th for the group chat? The NorthStar.com, the text they hid Charlie Kirk's. The North Star, the text they hid Charlie Kirk. Doing my keywords. Sick. Yeah, I recognize this article. Boom. Thanks, Mystic Maven. You're a legend. I'll dig through that and confirm. On the evening of December 8th, Charlie Kirk sent a series of messages to a small group chat of colleagues. Boom. Got it. Got it. Okay. Cool. So what we'll do here is we'll go... Oh, it would be right here. That's our timeline. That's going to feature in prominently along with our flight paths. And we're going to try to put this all together on Friday for the mainstream normie audience, so to speak.
That would be enough to collapse the current paradigm and change the whole planet.